The Midnight Library was a 2020 novel that has recently, or to my knowledge as of recent, gained mass popularity and interest. The novel follows a girl named Nora Seed who believes that there's no point to life. She's incredibly depressed and she can't pull herself out of it. She has meds, but she refuses to go get them filled. So know that during this I will be talking about mental health, suicide, depression, etc., including pet death. If you think that these subjects might trigger you, I highly suggest not watching this and probably not reading this book. So, the book starts with a variety of information given to us. Nora's single. She's in her 30s, she doesn't have children, she recently got fired from her job at a music store due to her depression. Her cat also died, which didn't really help how she felt. As far as she knows, her cat got hit by a car. The book is divided into before she decides to kill herself and afterward. During the start of the book, we also learned about her failed relationship with a man named Dan. She also wanted to become a glaciologist, but didn't follow through on that and instead majored in philosophy. A lot of these things leave her primed for many regrets, which I'll cover later with the Book of Regrets. In addition, back when her father passed away when she was in school, she frequently spent time in her school's library. There she played chess every day with the librarian, Mrs. Elm. Sometimes after this, she was playing in a band with her brother and some other friends, band titled The Labyrinth. Their band seemed to be doing really good. She liked it, except at some point she started having panic attacks when she was on stage, and she couldn't play inside of the band anymore. Her brother did not like her for this. Obviously, the two of them fell out. Her father wanted her to become an Olympic swimmer. She never did that. She was swimming since she was a little kid, and she was great at it, and she had a lot of potential, except she decided not to pursue it. In addition with the band thing, her ex, Dan, advised her not to pursue the band. He really didn't like the idea of her doing that, so that also added on to her stress and her decision not to. Back inside the library, Mrs. Elm inspired her to be a glaciologist after her father died. And in addition to all of this, with Dan, she walks out on her wedding 2 days before it happens, ultimately leaving him. On top of all of these, on the day she decides to die, her neighbor says he doesn't need her to deliver his medication anymore. Her best friend Izzy, who is in Australia, will not respond to her text. Her cat dies, and she loses her job at String Theory, which is a music store. So we're already pretty primed to have her be incredibly upset, especially with her depression. After she decides to end her own life, she wakes up in a huge library that seemingly has no end. After walking through it a bit, she finds Mrs. Elm, who tells her that this is called the Midnight Library. In the Midnight Library, which is a place between life and death, essentially kind of like limbo, I guess you would say, someone gets to live out all of their other lives that resulted from different choices they could have made. What would have happened if you did this or this instead of this? Time doesn't move here, and people get help in choosing different lives through the Book of Regret. And it's exactly what it says it is, a whole list of regrets a person had throughout their life. Things like, I wish I married Dan, or I wish I kept my cat inside and treated him better, were two of Nora's regrets. Throughout the book, Nora visits different lives that she was curious about. In the first one, she visits a life where she married Dan, and she and him had a pub in the countryside, which was always Dan's dream, so his dream fulfilled was great and amazing, she thought. Inside of this life, Dan's treatment of Nora reminded Nora how rough their relationship was, in particular that he had cheated on her inside of this life, and he was also an alcoholic. In addition, he was just incredibly rude to her, which is obviously a huge red flag. Once Nora feels disappointed in this life, or any life, she fades and she returns to the library, and the original Nora from that life kinda just doesn't remember what just happened. After the next life, where Nora says that she wishes she kept her cat inside, she finds out her cat's dead anyway. Mrs. Elm tells her that her cat, named Volt, or Voltaire, had an illness related to his heart and was going to die anyway. She tells Nora that she took really good care of Volts, and he had a really happy life, even though his life might have been a bit shorter than it should have been. As Nora checks the Book of Regrets, the regret about not giving Volt a good life fades from the page and is gone. She doesn't regret it anymore. More of the rest of the book is Nora going to different lives. In one, she is a glaciologist, and after an encounter with a polar bear, she learns that she does want to live. In this life, she also learns of someone else who is going through various lives at their Midnight Library. In another life, she pursues the band and is famous, but is involved in a lot of scandals, and in addition, inside of this life, her brother died of overdose a couple of years before she popped into this reality. and upon learning that her brother died, she returns to the library. In another, she decides that she wanted to go out with Ash, who was a person who shopped at the music store she worked at. In addition, he had also invited Nora to coffee at a point in time after shopping at that shop, and he was also the person that had told Nora, hey, by the way, your cat's dead. In this life, it seems really well. They're married, they have a kid named Ollie, they have a dog. She seems really happy here to the point to where she actively tries to prevent leaving when she feels like she's about to fade away. She doesn't want to go back, however, ultimately it isn't her choice and she does end up leaving. The thing that causes her to leave is that she feels like she didn't deserve this life, she didn't work for it, this isn't her life, it's another Nora's. Inside of this life, though, through interacting with other people, she comes to realize how good of an impact she had on others, even if it wasn't really that noticeable inside of her original life. So, when she goes back, the library's falling apart, or, in other words, Nora's probably dying. Despite not wanting to die anymore, time is now ticking forward and the library is crumbling to the ground. Nora begs Mrs. Elm to return her to her life with Ash and her kid, but the books are on fire and there's nothing Miss Elm can do at this point. Except that she instructs Nora to go find the book for her root life if she wants to live, and to write something in it. After finding the book, after Miss Elm gave her instructions on where it was, Nora writes things inside of the book, and then repeatedly gets frustrated because nothing's happening, and then inside of a fit she writes I am alive inside of all caps, and then she closes the book. She wakes up. The library's gone. She's in her root life after trying to end her own life, so she still has to deal with the health consequences of that. She stumbles out of her house on the brink of death, feeling incredibly ill, and tells her neighbor to call for help, and then she passes out on his doorstep. She wakes up in a hospital with her brother and best friend there. Her brother begs Nora to not leave again, finally amending their relationship after all this time. Her best friend, who had moved to Australia without Nora, is there and finally wants to catch up. And lastly, Nora visits Miss Elm, who is still alive inside of this life but wasn't alive inside of some other ones, and Nora plays chess with her one last time, like they used to do when she was younger after her father died. Nora is now filled with gratitude and a newfound sense for life after having this experience. Overall, I think the book is about life, regret, and depression. No matter how many lives Nora lives through, and no matter how many different choices she could have made, there is no life for her like the original one. Throughout her journey, she learns that she does want to live. Nothing like almost getting killed teaching you that you want to actually live, right? And she learns that her life does have meaning to people. Upon waking up inside of the hospital, there are people there who missed her, proving that she is needed by other people in her life, which contrasts to what she said earlier about how nobody needs her, after she was told that her neighbor doesn't need her to deliver his prescription anymore. I think that's the message the book tries to convey. In addition, I can see a meaning relating to regret, seeing as that's kind of what the entire book is about. In that specifically, even if you did things that you regret differently, the outcome might not be as good as you expect after all. Overall, we have one life, and we should take it, and we should strive forward with it. I think this book taught me a lot about depression and about regret, and particularly that if we don't know if we would be happier having done something else in our lives, why would we stress out about it? Why stress out about all the other possibilities if we don't know what's going to happen? We don't know if it's going to be better, we don't know if it's going to be worse, so the only thing that happens from us stressing out about it is that we just get stressed. But at any rate, that's about all I have to say about the book. It was a great read with fairly short chapters. I think the longest chapter I encountered was like 10 to 15 minutes long, which isn't that bad. I'm always a fan of shorter chapters. They're easier to read for me. I like having multiple stopping points just because I don't like to sit down and read for too long straight. Overall, I think I would probably give this book a 5 out of 5, just because how it reframed my thinking about life, with the whole regret thing and the whole you need to appreciate your life thing. I can say very, very confidently that this book likely changed my life for the better.